That night started like any other Thursday. Molly had mentioned the work party earlier in the week. Something about a winter offsite her company was throwing at a boutique hotel about 40 minutes outside the city. She made it sound dry: team building, networking, end-of-quarter budget to burn. Normally, she liked when I came to events like that. Said it helped balance the mood when things got too corporate. But this time, she was different. "Don't bother coming," she said when I asked if she wanted me to meet her after work. Her voice was light, too light. "It's just a bunch of stiff execs and plus ones pretending to have fun." I remember raising an eyebrow. "You sure? I don't mind the drive." She hesitated, just for a second. "No, really. You'd be bored. It's not worth it. And you don't know anyone." I said okay. But something about the way she said it didn't sit right with me. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. We'd been together for nearly 6 years, married for 3. We'd had arguments, sure. A few rough patches. But nothing major. Still, lately, there'd been a shift. Small things. Subtle. But real. That afternoon, I sat in my car outside the office, watching the rain hit the windshield, and felt it in my gut. Something was off. I couldn't explain it. I just knew. It wasn't about trust or paranoia. It was about instinct. So I made a decision. Around 8:30 that evening, I texted her a simple line. "Hey, I think I left my keys in your car. Any chance I could swing by?" She didn't respond for a few minutes. Then finally, "I'm at the event. Try calling the front desk. I left your spare on the kitchen counter. Just use that. No, come by if you want. No, miss you. Just instructions." Clinical. I didn't listen. I got in my car and drove to the hotel anyway. The place was tucked behind a tree-lined road, the kind of upscale lodge that tries to pass for rustic. Edison bulbs in the windows, fireplace in the lobby, and that faint smell of wood smoke and citrus candles. I parked far from the main entrance and walked in through the side path. I didn't ask where the event was. I didn't need to. I just followed the sound of muffled conversation and music until I saw a glass-walled lounge near the elevators. I stayed just out of sight behind a column, half hiding like some cliché from a bad movie. I felt ridiculous, but that feeling disappeared the moment I saw her. Molly, standing near the tall windows in a dark green dress I hadn't seen before. Her hair was up, loose in a way that looked accidental but probably took effort. She had that slight glow, the kind that didn't come from champagne. And she wasn't alone. There was a man beside her. Mid-30s, maybe. Clean suit. Handsome, but not in a flashy way, the kind of guy who looked like he always had something clever to say. He was close. Not touching her exactly, but close enough. Mate in the way people are when they've already crossed lines. Then he reached out and adjusted the collar of her coat. Not quickly. Not awkwardly. His fingers lingered, smoothing the fabric along her shoulder like he'd done it before. She didn't move, didn't brush his hand away. She smiled. Not big, but soft. Familiar. I froze. And then she saw me. Her face changed instantly. Not panicked, just stunned. Like her brain needed a few extra seconds to decide how to react. She stepped away from him slightly, as if distance could undo what I'd just seen, then walked toward me. Her smile was immediate, too quick, too bright. "You could have texted," she said, like nothing was wrong. "We were just talking." Her voice had that forced calmness. And I noticed. It shook slightly on just. I didn't answer, just looked at her. She glanced back, saw him watching, then turned to me again with that old familiar look. The one she used to give me when I forgot an anniversary or overcooked dinner. The "don't make this a thing" look. "Don't start with the suspicions again," she said, her tone tightening. That's when it hit me. She wasn't worried I'd get jealous. She was worried I'd already seen too much. She didn't sound angry. She sounded defensive. Not like someone trying to fix a misunderstanding. More like someone bracing for a fallout. I looked at her for a long second, then at the guy behind her. He had turned around and was pretending to scroll through his phone. Badly. I didn't know his name, but something told me he knew mine. It was so quiet I could hear the ice in someone's drink clink behind the bar. I nodded slowly. Not because I believed her, just because I didn't want to give her the performance she expected. She opened her mouth again, probably to double down, to say I was overreacting or making assumptions. But I turned and walked away. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. That moment, the stillness in her face, the break in her voice, the way she didn't even try to explain, told me everything I'd been afraid to admit. She wasn't trying to protect my feelings. She was trying to protect her story. And I wasn't part of it anymore. I barely remember the drive home. The rain had started again, soft at first, then heavy, the kind that blurs everything outside the windshield. I didn't turn on the radio, didn't answer my phone, just drove, every red light stretching longer than the last, every memory flashing behind my eyes like some cruel highlight reel I didn't ask for. By the time I got back to our apartment, the place already felt different. Still smelled like her, lavender and whatever perfume she kept on the dresser, but something about the air felt stale, hollow, like a house that had already been abandoned, only no one had bothered to move out yet. I stood in the kitchen with my keys in my hand for 5 straight minutes, not knowing what to do next. I wasn't angry, not yet, just numb. The kind of numb that sinks in before everything else catches up. And that's when the real thoughts started to creep in. The ones I had shoved to the back of my mind for months, pretending they weren't red flags, just stress, work, coincidence. But now they all started lining up, one after the other, like puzzle pieces that had always been sitting in front of me, just waiting for me to stop being blind. Like how, for the past few months, she'd always turn her phone screen face down. Not just when we were eating dinner or watching something, even when she left the room, even when it was just charging. And how she started saying she was going to yoga twice a week, but never came back sweaty. Not once. There was this one evening in September. I remember because it was my birthday week. She said she had a team dinner and promised she'd make it up to me with something special that weekend. She came home late, hair perfect, makeup still flawless. Said they'd gone somewhere, surprisingly upscale for a work thing. I asked which restaurant. She blinked, paused too long, then said, "I forget the name. It was new." I let it go. Then there was the lingerie. Stuff she used to only bring out on vacations or our anniversary, maybe suddenly appearing on a random Tuesday. No context, no warning. Just there. And then, just as suddenly, nothing. Cold again. Distant. Like a switch had flipped and she was back in a different mode. And I remembered something else. Something small. One night, I walked into the room while she was folding laundry. I went to grab a shirt from the drawer, and she practically lunged for her purse, snatching it off the bed. "Don't mess with my stuff," she said, playful on the surface. But her eyes weren't smiling. That happened more than once. Little things. Her clenching when I touched her bag. Grabbing her keys a little too fast if I moved near them. Laughing off my curiosity. Saying she was just organized. Just private. I believed her. Or maybe I just didn't want to start a fight. That night, though, after I saw her with him, I sat on the edge of the bed, the sheets still warm from the morning, and thought about how many times I'd chosen silence over suspicion. How many moments I could have asked real questions and didn't. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through her old messages. Not to read them, but to check the patterns. Her texts used to come quick. Short little check-ins throughout the day. Lunch break. Or miss you or almost home. Now, nothing unless I texted first. Sometimes even then, she'd leave it unread until I asked again. There was one week in October, 5 days straight, where she said she was exhausted and just needed to crash early. I remember going to bed alone, listening to her on the phone in the living room. She said it was her sister. She was laughing, quiet but not enough. Her sister called me 2 weeks later. Casual catch-up. Said she hadn't talked to Molly in forever. I didn't say anything. But now I couldn't stop hearing that silence. And the weirdest part? I kept remembering this dream I had just a few nights ago. In it, we were at a party, just the two of us, surrounded by people I didn't know. Every time I tried to talk to her, she'd turn away, whisper something to someone else. And when I finally tapped her on the shoulder, she looked at me like I was a stranger. I woke up sweating. Didn't think much of it then. Thought maybe I'd just been working too much, or that it was the stress of the upcoming holidays. But now I realized that dream was just my subconscious trying to wake me up. Everything I had ignored, everything I had excused. It was all right there, laid out in front of me like a crime scene I'd been standing in the middle of for months, pretending the bloodstains were just paint. The way she started sleeping with one foot already off the bed. Her body angled away. The way her playlists changed. No more shared music. Just private headphone sessions she never explained. The way she started complimenting other people more. Like out of nowhere. Marcus is so funny. Brian's wife is gorgeous. Trevor's presentation was incredible. Nothing wrong with compliments, but they came paired with silence whenever I did something worth noticing. Like she had to talk up the rest of the world just to remind herself there was more to see. I kept telling myself it was nothing. That every couple has dry spells. That jobs get busy. That people pull away sometimes and come back again. But the truth was simpler. She was already somewhere else. Already walking in another world. One she didn't invite me into. One she didn't want me to find. And maybe I was naive. Maybe I was the fool who thought love was stronger than distance. Maybe I believed that if I gave her space, she'd come back to me on her own. But now I saw it for what it was. That moment in the lobby, when she looked at me and realized she couldn't explain her way out of it, that was the crack in the dam. And now everything was pouring out. I sat there, in the dark, the streetlight outside flickering through the blinds, and I felt something strange. Not rage, not heartbreak, just clarity. This wasn't a new betrayal. It was just the first time I couldn't pretend it wasn't real. I didn't plan to follow her. Not at first. But 3 days after that night at the hotel, I found myself pulling into the parking garage next to her building, heart pounding like I was doing something wrong. Even though, deep down, I knew I wasn't the one sneaking around. She had said she'd be working through lunch. Some internal meeting, nothing interesting. She'd texted that morning. I almost replied something casual. Something that would keep up the illusion of normalcy. But instead, I slid my phone into my pocket and just drove. There's something surreal about standing outside your spouse's office and realizing you have no idea what you're hoping to see. Best case scenario? You catch her being honest. Worst case? You confirm the gut feeling that's been chewing holes in your chest for weeks. I leaned against the side of a bookstore across the street, pretending to read the flyers taped to the window. My palms were sweating. I kept glancing at the door like some teenager on a stakeout. At 12:17 they came out. Her and him. Same guy from the hotel. He was wearing a navy blazer, no tie, and carried himself like the kind of man who didn't have to try. The kind who smiled because he already knew you'd smile back. Molly was laughing at something he said. Not fake laughing. Not polite. The kind of laugh I hadn't heard in months. Her head tilted toward him. Her eyes sparkled in a way they hadn't with me in a long time. And then she did it. She reached up, fixed the edge of his collar, and kissed him. Right there on the sidewalk. Nothing wild. Just a simple kiss. Natural. Practiced. Like she'd done it before. She didn't look around. Didn't check who was watching. She didn't have to. Because in her mind, I wasn't even a possibility anymore. They walked across the street to a small bistro, one of those glass-front places with trendy lighting and overpriced salads. She used to say it was too pretentious for a weekday. Yet here she was, sliding into a corner booth with him like it was their routine. I didn't move. I just stood there, staring through the rain-streaked glass, watching her twirl a strand of hair and smile at this man like he was the only person in the world. And maybe, to her, he was. There's something hollow about that kind of moment. You don't feel rage. Not immediately. You feel distance, like you're watching someone else's life. Like the version of you that existed a few days ago is gone. And this new version, the one standing in the cold, watching your wife kiss someone else in public, hasn't figured out what to do yet. I stayed across the street for maybe 20 minutes. Long enough to see her lean across the table and tap his wrist when he made a joke. Long enough to know this wasn't new. And long enough to know she wasn't sorry. Eventually, I turned around and walked back to my car. My hands were shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, staring at the raindrops collecting on the windshield, feeling like the world had tipped slightly sideways. She didn't look for me once, didn't check the street, didn't glance toward the door. She knew she was safe. She knew I was still the fool sitting at home, waiting. But I wasn't waiting anymore. On the drive back, every word she'd said over the past month started replaying in my head, like a highlight reel of things I should have caught sooner. I just need more space. I've been feeling off lately. Work's been crazy. I can't think straight. I think I just need some time to myself. Each one sounded different now, like lines from a script, rehearsed, smooth, words designed to keep me right where she wanted me. Patient, trusting, in the dark. I got home, went to the kitchen, and poured a glass of water. My reflection in the microwave door looked like a stranger, older somehow, less certain. And then my phone buzzed. It was her. Hey, day's running long. Probably won't be home till late. Don't wait up. Love you. I stared at that last part, the love you, and felt sick. Not because it was a lie, but because she didn't even need it to be true anymore. She just needed it to buy time. I didn't respond. Instead, I scrolled through our old messages, the ones from years ago, before everything got so quiet. The way she used to text me jokes in the middle of meetings. The way she'd send selfies from grocery store lines, saying, "Do I need cheese or no cheese?" The way she'd say, "I miss your stupid face," when I traveled for work. That version of her was gone. Or maybe she had never really been that version. Maybe I had just wanted her to be. That night I tried to sleep. I laid in our bed, staring at the ceiling, trying not to imagine the things she might be doing, who she might be with, whether he was touching the places I used to know. I'd never felt more alone. At 1:42 a.m., I heard the door click open. She moved softly, thinking I was asleep. I stayed still, eyes closed, breathing even. I listened to her set her purse down, to the faint shuffle of her boots coming off, to the quiet opening of the fridge, a sip of water, a drawer closing, then silence. Then, finally, the sound of the guest room door closing behind her. She didn't come to bed. She didn't even check. She just walked past me like I was furniture, like I was something she had already started detaching from, something she didn't want to deal with yet. I laid there, staring at the ceiling, and realized something terrifying. She wasn't hiding anymore. She wasn't covering her tracks. She wasn't afraid I'd find out. Because in her mind I already had, and I hadn't done anything. That made me safe, predictable, containable, and that realization, that's what finally made the anger arrive. Not loud, not explosive, just steady. I was no longer someone she feared losing. I was just a fixture, a formality. The man she used to come home to, now downgraded to someone she passed by without a second glance. The morning after she came home late, the air felt heavy, like the walls themselves knew something had changed. She moved quietly around the kitchen, making coffee like always, humming under her breath. From the way she avoided my eyes, you'd think she was the one being watched. I sat at the table, pretending to scroll through my phone. She glanced at me once, then quickly back down at her mug. "Did you sleep okay?" she asked, voice casual, almost too bright. "Fine," I said. It was a lie. I hadn't closed my eyes for more than 10 minutes. She nodded, kept stirring her coffee even though the spoon had already clinked against the sides too many times. Then she grabbed her bag and her keys, muttering something about meetings. No kiss. Not even a goodbye. The door closed, and I just sat there, staring at the swirl of steam rising from the cup she'd left half-finished. I wanted to smash it, or scream, or run after her. But instead, I just watched the steam fade until there was nothing left. That evening, she texted me, "You're overreacting. The fact that you showed up to the party uninvited, that's weird. I'm tired. I just needed space. You're always pressuring me." I read the words 3 times, each line colder than the last. There it was, the flip, the quiet rewrite of the story. I had walked in on something undeniable, and somehow, she had turned it into my fault. I didn't reply. Not that night. Not the next morning. But she didn't stop there. The next day, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, Jenna, her best friend, was standing there, eyes red, holding her phone like it was burning her hand. "I shouldn't be here," she said. "But I need to tell you something." I let her in. She sat on the couch, knees pressed together, looking like she wanted to disappear. "She's been saying things about you," Jenna said quietly. "To people. To me." I frowned. "What kind of things?" She looked down. "That you're controlling. That you check her phone. That you follow her. That she's afraid." "Afraid of me?" I asked, stunned. "Of what?" Jenna shook her head quickly. "I don't believe her. I swear I don't. But she's been planting the idea for a while. Telling everyone that you've been jealous lately. That you show up places unannounced. So if you ever confronted her or if anyone saw you, she could say it was because you're unstable." I leaned back, the weight of it hitting me all at once. She wasn't just cheating. She was rewriting me. Every story she told, every half-truth, it wasn't just to excuse her own behavior. It was to build a new world where she was the victim and I was the villain. "She's done this before," Jenna whispered. "You're not the first person she's done this to. Different situation, same pattern. She starts over, reinvents herself, makes people feel sorry for her. It's like she's addicted to it." I didn't know what to say. I felt the ground tilt beneath me. Not from shock, but from recognition. Everything Jenna said clicked too easily, too perfectly. The way Molly had started crying during arguments that never used to draw tears. The way she'd twist every question I asked into an accusation. The way she'd say, "You're imagining things," until I started wondering if I really was. When Jenna left, I sat in silence for hours. My phone buzzed a few times. Molly again, asking if I was done acting dramatic. I turned it face down. It wasn't anger I felt. Not exactly. It was something darker. A slow, crawling realization that I had been living in a story she'd been writing for months, maybe years. That night, I poured myself a drink and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the framed photo of us from 2 summers ago. We were on a pier, laughing, wind in her hair. I remembered that day, how she'd kissed me just before the picture, whispered that she was the luckiest woman alive. I wondered if she had meant it even then, or if that was just another chapter in her ongoing performance. The next day, I decided to stop playing my part. When she came home from work, she found me in the living room. I had packed a suitcase. Just one. She froze in the doorway. "What's that?" "I'm staying with my brother for a bit," I said. "You should have the space you keep asking for." Her eyes flickered, just for a second. Panic, maybe. Then she smiled faintly. "So now you're running away? Call it what you want. You're being childish, you know that?" she said, setting down her purse. "You're angry because you embarrassed yourself at that party. You came uninvited and saw me talking to a colleague. Now you're trying to make me feel guilty for it." "A colleague," I said quietly. "You kissed him." Her jaw tightened. "You think you saw something you didn't. You always do." I laughed then. Not because it was funny, because it was so absurd I couldn't hold it in. "You don't even deny it anymore," I said. "You just twist it until I sound insane." She crossed her arms, defensive. "You're twisting it. You always have to be the victim." Something in me snapped. Not in the loud, destructive way I expected, but in a clear, clean break. Like glass. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized she wasn't afraid of me. She was afraid of losing control of the narrative. And that's when I stopped arguing. Because you can't win against someone who's rewritten the script before you even show up. I zipped the suitcase. Her eyes followed my every move. She didn't stop me, didn't cry, didn't beg. She just said, "You'll regret this." I paused in the doorway, looked back at her one last time and said, "You already do." Then I walked out. That night, I stayed at my brother's house. I couldn't sleep there either. But for the first time in months, the silence didn't feel like punishment. Felt like peace. If leaving was the opening act, the divorce became the show. 2 weeks after I moved out, her lawyer sent the first email. I remember staring at the subject line, initial mediation proposal, and feeling like I'd just been served a script I didn't audition for. Suddenly, everything was formal, legal, cold. No more we, just claims, numbers, and quiet threats wrapped in polite phrases like fair division and standard entitlements. She wanted half of everything. Half the house, half the savings. My car, not even hers. She claimed it was marital property. Her lawyer even included a line saying she'd temporarily sacrificed her career growth to support the household, which was laughable, considering I had watched her climb the ladder without interruption while I worked 60-hour weeks to keep things stable. But she'd done her homework, gathered documents, padded the narrative. She was playing the long game, and she was good at it. Mediation was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon. I remember arriving early. I sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes, staring at the tinted windows of the office building, trying to guess which one belonged to the conference room where my marriage would officially die. When I finally walked in, my lawyer, Daniel, was already there, calm as ever. He handed me a folder full of bank statements, text message logs, and receipts. At the very back was the still frame from a hotel security camera. Molly with him, standing too close in the lobby 2 days before she claimed we'd separated. She was smiling, holding a wine glass, wearing the dress I'd seen folded on the chair the night I left. I wanted to feel something, anger, maybe disgust, vindication, but I just nodded and tucked the photo back into the folder. 10 minutes later, she walked in, and that's when I realized she wasn't here to mourn. She was here to perform. She looked like she was going to a job interview, hair curled perfectly, soft makeup, navy blazer over a pale blouse. She didn't make eye contact, just sat down across the table, opened her own folder, and flashed that tight, professional smile I'd seen her use at company functions. Her lawyer, some sharp-tongued woman named Kendra, started first. She listed Molly's contributions to the household, the emotional toll of the marriage, and then, my personal favorite, a pattern of controlling behavior that limited Molly's independence. I nearly laughed, but Daniel placed a hand on my arm before I could say a word. When it was our turn, Daniel laid out the facts like puzzle pieces. The dates, the financials, the digital trail, and finally the photo. Kendra frowned. Molly didn't even blink. When the mediator asked if she had a response, Molly simply said, "We were already emotionally separated. He just didn't realize it yet." That's when I finally spoke. I turned to her and asked, "Was there ever a moment where you planned to be honest? Or did you always expect to end it like this?" She looked at me, calm, steady. "You were always controlling," she said, as if reading from a script. I couldn't breathe. I lost myself next to you. There was no emotion in her voice, just practiced detachment. I nodded slowly. "You said you needed space, not a second life." She didn't answer, didn't have to. The rest of the meeting blurred. Proposals, counters, rejections. The mediator, bless her, tried to keep it civil, but it was like refereeing a chess match where one player had already flipped the board and walked away. When it ended, we stood in silence near the elevators. I didn't look at her, but I could feel her glance over once, maybe out of habit, maybe out of calculation. As I stepped into the elevator, she spoke for the first time outside the conference room. "I didn't expect you to fight back." I turned. "That's the difference between you and me. I don't perform." The doors closed before she could respond. That night, I poured myself a drink, sat on the floor of my brother's spare room, and finally let it hit me. Not just the betrayal, but the sheer emptiness of it all. The fact that someone could share your bed, your life, your inside jokes, and still walk into a room and pretend like none of it mattered. She didn't flinch during mediation. Not once. It was like she had rehearsed every scene, memorized every response. Like she had been preparing for this for months while I was still searching for answers. I thought that would be the end of it. But then she started showing up. Not physically at first, just in the background. People I hadn't spoken to in years started messaging me. "Hey, heard about the split. Sorry, man." She said you were going through stuff? She was planting seeds again. Quiet ones. Not loud enough to confront, but just enough to paint herself in softer tones. The misunderstood wife. The one who tried everything. The one who was hurt too, even if he can't see it. She was rewriting the narrative in real time, but I was done playing along. I gathered every email, every text, every time-stamped receipt that told the real story. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wasn't going to let her version be the only one left standing. We went through 2 more rounds of mediation. Each time she was colder, more polished, like this was a game she was determined to win. But she wasn't ready for the silence, because I stopped reacting, stopped giving her anything she could twist. I showed up. I signed what I had to. I declined the settlement she thought I'd accept just to get out clean. And I let the truth speak for itself. Eventually, her lawyer folded. The house stayed mine. The car, too. She got a small payout, one that reflected the actual math, not the emotion. And a line was drawn. Clear one. When we finalized it, she looked at me for a long time across the table. Like she wanted to say something. Maybe she was searching for some version of the man who would have given her grace. Or maybe she was wondering why the performance hadn't worked this time. Either way, I said nothing. Because the version of me she remembered, he was gone. A few days after mediation, I got an email. It was from him, Grayson. He said she lied to him, too. Told him we were already separated. Told him I was cruel. Then she started lying to him just like she did to me. He said he left her. Said he felt like he was drowning in her version of reality. Reading his message, I didn't feel angry. I just felt clarity. She never slipped. She just rehearsed it all with someone else. 2 days later, she showed up at my office. No call. No warning. Said Grayson was gone. That she had lied too much and lost everything. Her voice cracked. Her hands trembled. For a moment, I saw the version of her I used to know. But it didn't matter. I looked her in the eye and said, "You already lost everything. That hasn't changed." Then I turned and walked away. And this time, she didn't follow.